This is about the finished up product, but thanks for tuning in. And what we're doing is Qauff LSD, which is right here, and Stuart Leask or Losk Spec or Leask Spec. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Oil pan expansion. If you're not following him, go follow him. It's just Stuart Losk or Leask Spec, and go support him. I have had 1,000 questions, and he responded every time, super fast, super helpful. So highly recommend him. He makes a bunch of stuff for Skylines. The oil pan Stuart Losk extension is welded on. These are his welds, these are mine. For never touching I'm not gonna say never, but for like my second time touching cast, I'm proud of it. It's not the best, but it's welded. It's not leaking. If you're doing the Tomei baffles, I ground down that little spot in that little spot level, and that's just where it sits in there. Since we got new bearings, I'm going to heat this part here around, and then that bearing race should just fall out. If not, I have a puller, and same thing with this, but this side you can actually just pop that out. There's little spots in the back you can get a hammer to. Same thing for the other side. And there's a shim in here that spaces your backlash, so keep mind of that. It's really important to note the location of these because they are different, so you can't really mess them up. But you got two C40s. One is going to be on like, right here. The other one is going to be on the little cover that goes right there. So we're going to do this one right now. The bearings are already on the LSD, but the bearing race needs to be installed. So that's what we're going to do now. They're fine, but they're brand new. I'm here, so I'm going to do it. This is cast aluminum, and that race is steel. All you have to do is heat around here. I do have a slide hammer out just in case I need it. But theoretically, you should be able to heat around here and then maybe tap it or just grab it with something like a hook. Don't use your hands because it's going to be hot, and it should pop right out. This took about a minute or two of heating it, and then it really just fell out as soon as you can get something behind it to pull it out. And this is just reinstalling the bearing race. There is a shim behind it, but if you get it hot enough, it'll expand, and then that bearing race is cold that you can just slip it in by hand and then just wait for it to cool, and it'll be pressed in essentially. You can tell by the marks on it. I just tried to move it with grease on my glove, and it didn't move. It's cool already, and it has contracted on there. So next, I'm getting bit on the head by a mosquito. Ow, that freaking hurt. We got to get that seal out because it looks like it was leaking, and plus we're gonna be heating this up, so we're gonna damage it anyways. I'm gonna put a piece of wood under this so I'm not hitting it on concrete, but you're gonna take, I mean, 1 1/4 fits down in there perfectly. Go boop. You could probably even, oh no. But you're gonna push that out down through there. So got the seal out, as you can see. It's all cleaned up. Now we gotta get that race out, and like all we're gonna do is just heat it up and go like that, and it should fall right out. Essentially had to use the same trick with snap ring pliers and the puller to get behind it and just give it a little pop, and it popped right out. And boom. That's easy. While it's still hot, that's how much more it expands, and it just drops down in there like that. So let's wait for this to cool, and then we got a new O-ring. This is a shim, so we use that. We got a new O-ring, and we should be able to start reassembling after we get 2 more races out. So while this cools, let's do that. We're gonna do that race, and if I can, that race. This one should just fall out if I heat this right here. Just like that. So while this is hot, we're gonna lay it down right side, put the new one in, let it cool, and rinse and repeat. This is an absolute pain. I froze the whole pinion bearing, so everything with this axle through here, like that, and froze that in the freezer legitimately for 24 hours. And then without the seal in it, put this on there, tapped it on with a dead blow, lubed the heck out of the splines, and then ran it in with the nut. There's no other way to do it. You have to put this into a vise and then run it in and then torque it to, I think it's like 125 to 140. I just did, I think 130 foot-pounds. And then it's a little tight, but it's loosening up the more I use it. It's just new. Like, that's perfectly nice, and there we go. Nice and smooth. Just everything has to get centered, and this is still cold, so. And then plus lube will make it much easier. But once you do that, you take this back off. That'll be pressed in to the bearing so this won't fall out. Put the new seal in. You can either use this or a big like 1 7/8" socket, I think is what I used for it. Yep, 1 7/8". Tap that seal in and then put this back in the vise, run it back in, and rinse and repeat. And this is on now. Now what we have to do is come over here, stand this up, knock this axle out right here, which is more or less here because there's 2 O-rings, one right here, keeping the fluid, the oil fluid in here, like the oil, separate from the gear oil. And I'm here, I have them, so I'm going to replace them. So we're going to stand up on this face and then go from there. Alright, so we got the axle out, and like you can see, O-ring, and just come around this way, O-ring, which is, if you don't know what an O-ring is, right there. And that just felt brittle doing that. This side is always seeped a little bit. It's never like poured out, but the seal is always wet. So I'm assuming that's the culprit. And then these from, I think it's TFA is where I ordered these from. TFA or TF Works. I think it's TF Works. Is obviously front differential. It's the only O-rings in the whole oil pan. And also, if you look at this chart, you have C41. It's showing one here, but these should be here and here. And then C42 is obviously the bearing. This is a bearing chart. So we are replacing this, which also says front diff, axle, O-ring, non-gear side. Alright, so got these out. Sorry I'm not recording, like doing all the work. It's hard to hold this and also get a good angle. But you just use a O-ring pick and pull them out. Those are the old ones. They're not brittle at all, and they're still really plump. Like if you squeeze them, they give you feedback, which is kind of how you tell O-ring's bad or not, or it would be squished. These are the new ones. This is meant to keep engine oil out, so I just got a little bit of engine oil, VR1. Actually, it's dirty, but it's still engine oil. And we are going to douse these in oil, put those in, and then continue to the next one. But I did find the bag. This is the part number for this whole kit. This is the seal kit. This is different than the bearing kit that I got. So there's 2 different diagrams. I don't know. Oh yeah, part number there for bearing kit, and then part number there for seal kit. So let's get new seals in. So this is also a really good time. I did it already because I didn't plan on doing all this, but here we are. To drill these out to, I think 5mm. I did a 1/4 just to make them a little bigger. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. And that way you get additional drainage through your oil pan. Make sure you clean everything out, obviously. And then this is all cleaned up. I just took some Scotch-Brite and just scuffed it up, just getting slag, not slag, but like there's still a couple spots of oil buildup. I just want it to be nice and clean. Oil your O-rings, and then I'm going to oil this too, and then it goes in through here, and that's really about it. After that, we can put this seal in. We can put the half shaft through here, bolt it back on, which is right next to Colt. Hey, Colt. And yeah, so let's get to it. I might be able to film this one. Yeah, seals there, and boop, 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 boop. It's kind of hard to hit it down in that center, but if you can't hit it down in their center, then I got this, and we're just gonna tap it down in there. Till it's about flush. When you're flush, it's pre-lubed. Make sure you lube these inside too, because when you push the axle down through, you don't want to tear that, because that's what keeps the oil, the gear oil, separate from coming out, or even just going through really. So now we can put the half shaft in, and we're making progress. We're making actually really good progress. Well, don't be a goober and put this in first, because then you can't get the differential in. Alright, so now is the time that we are going to be putting in the Qauff LSD. Take the Qauff LSD. New bearings are on it, and those bearings are just this one, the C40s on this part right here, and that's super easy to do. And now we have to torque these to 80 foot-pounds. The spec is like 60, 65 to 82, but we're just going to do 80. So I'm going to zip these off, put a little Loctite on them, and then zip them back down and torque them. We got the pinion gear, or the ring gear on already. We also got a new bearing for the front pinion, and there's one shim down in there, and the other shim is right there. So make sure you keep track of those. And this goes into the front part of your drive shaft and ends up catching like that. So let's put let's torque this down and go from there. And like I said, these are already loose. They're just in by hand for locating them. And it's a 18 millimeter. So let's get these out. See how the ring gear fell down. So I'm going to tighten these two up and then take all the other ones out, put Loctite on them, put them back in. Battery's dying, so these are new bearings, but that is the orientation that it goes. And then we have to put this top sleeve on. We do have a new O-ring for that top sleeve, which is right here. That is part number if you need it. And that goes right there. So we're going to put that on now, pre-lube that with some motor oil, and slap this on. There is a shim. This is a shim. This is meant for your oil, not your oil, but part of your backlash set, so make sure you don't forget that. And this can only go one way, so you can't really mess it up. Even that's not right, because that hole doesn't line up, so we have to figure out which way this goes. And this also correlates with that cover too, so you can't mess it up. There's two, yeah, so figure this out and then on to the next thing. Battery's about to die, but these two small holes go on the bottom face, and then this arrow faces outwards towards the cover. So we got to get these locked down on. That'll set your backlash. With it set up here. If the phone falls, I apologize. Ended up finding 3-inch shims on Amazon. Motive Gear, I believe it is. It's like a side-by-side company, an off-road, but I will leave a link in the description because lifesaver. Checked like 10 different performance shops in the area, and I'm in North Carolina, so it's a lot of racing parts, and they're all really closed, but the ones that did answer didn't have anything. So we have zero this. Now it's being inaccurate. This is saying 0.0820. You can't see it, but I'm also getting 0.840. Either way, we're like, whatever that is our baseline, because we were 5,000s. Spec is 4 to 7,000s. We're at 9,000, so we need at least a 3,000 spacer, and this one is 0.005, and 0.9 minus that would be 0.4, so we would be right on the tight spec. But now it's saying 0.0045, so 45 thousandths. So we're going to try this one. I think this is the thinnest that's in this set. They didn't have, you're supposed to use just one, but they don't have just one. So now it's saying 0.083. So we're just going to try it, measure the backlash again, and hopefully this works. If not, rinse and repeat. So we have it, 0.845 spacer, and then that one's 0.005. So that's going to take it from 0.9 or 9 thousandths to 4 thousandths, probably 3.5. But I'm hoping that this is on a little smaller side. So yeah, it'll be right. It should be perfect. Alright, there's not really any videos of how to set backlash on an RB26 front differential. It's like any other differential, but for some reason there's no videos on it, so here is how you do it. So if you're rebuilding this, first thing you're going to need, obviously, is some gear oil. And you need to lube the bearings. And there's a bearing in there, there's a bearing in here, and there's one behind the pinion, which is going to be like right here. You need to lube those, rotate it 20 times, set your micrometer, not your micrometer, dial indicator on your pinion gear, or drive gear. Pinion gear is this one. That's pinion, drive. And set it on the tooth. You're going to zero it. This was $22 at Harbor Freight. And we have about 5.5, or about 5.5 thousandths. So 55 thou. Spec is 4 to 7 thousandths. As you saw previously, this was 10 thousandths, which is way too much. There is a spacer behind this race, which if you watch the video, if you continue watching the video, you'll see how to remove that, and you have to space that out. What I found, let me find them. This is the part number I got off Amazon. The 3-inch outer diameter, which is all that matters for this, and you get all of these. You have a bunch of thick ones. You're only supposed to use one. None of these were thick enough to use one, so I had to use a 55 thousandths one to space it, which gave me the correct spacing. I think that was about the smallest one in here, was about 5 thousandths or 55 thousandths. So definitely worth the purchase, because getting shims for this from overseas is nearly impossible, and this got here in 12 hours. So Amazon for the win. As you can see, we are doing the Tomei baffle inside of the oil pan, and it comes with baffle plate, bottom baffle like directions, 3 bolts, and 1 spacer. Let me show you where they go. So your spacer, it's going to go right there. You can see it underneath there. And then it comes with 2 Allen heads. I'm just going to put them here. I'm going to put actually the long one. There's a longer one and 2 shorter ones. The longer one goes here to account for the spacer, and then the other ones you just really reuse your OEM bolts. I am going to use longer ones here because, like, instance, that is the same length. That's longer than all these other ones, and I just want a longer one in here because this hole is significantly deeper. but baffles go in there like that. We have drilled out the oil drain backs to 1/4 inch, I believe, or 5mm, which is about the same. And then you just put these in, put Loctite on these bolts so they don't back out. They are super tiny M6 bolts, so you don't need a lot, and it doesn't need a lot of torque, just a little snug. And that's how that's installed. So, boop, boop.